realized that he had to divert the monster's attention to himself while Ina tried to deliver a precise blow to its head. It was the only way to defeat it. He slammed the mace into its body and felt a strong recoil, as if he had struck a rock. Everything went according to plan, but soon there was a significant problem. The sword simply did not enter the demon's head. Of course, in the game he had a high defense, but Bjorn could not imagine that it would be so difficult. The blade scratched the monster's neck only a little, and the wound healed in 3 seconds, similar to the passive skill, body preservation. But soon the demon demonstrated the active one as well. Calling of ghouls. Bjorn ordered the girl to get ready, it would be much harder now. Bjorn ordered Inar to deal with the ghouls while he distracted the demon. Within seconds the young man was blocking the huge monster's attacks with his shield, and soon he heard the message that the dead men were finished. Inar tried to pierce it with her sword, but was unsuccessful. Although it failed to harm him, the demon shifted its attention to the girl, leaving the back of her head exposed, which the barbarian took advantage of. A powerful blow with the mace opened up the bleeding, which infuriated the monster even more. He swung his arm with such force that Bjorn flew several meters backwards. If he hadn't put up his shield, his ribs would have been forgiven. He was beginning to think about giving up the hunt and returning to the lower-ranked monsters, but he saw Inar take a moment to grab the demon's leg when it was in the air. He thought it was a great idea to throw him off balance. It was odd that a barbarian would even think of such a thing, though this particular one stood out from the others. With a clatter, the demon collapsed to the ground. After so much wasted energy, the two friends were amused by the big man's unsuccessful attempts to get up on his own. With the same satisfied smiles on their faces, they threw deadly blows at him. A large magic crystal appeared in the place of the vanished corpse. Bjorn explained that it was worth only 100 ordinary, a small reward indeed. Inar asked how much that wonderful cream pie had cost. The young man replied that 3 crystals were just as much as they had gotten for killing the demon and his goons. The girl got excited and said that there was no time to sit around. He had more fun with her than with the passive fairy, though Erwin was dear to him in his own way. They met 70 more death demons along the way, as they saw one grabbing them by legs and then hitting them over the head. Bjorn especially benefited from killing them by getting a chance to drop an essence with pretty good properties. The next day, these huge monsters appeared in pairs. The way to deal with them was already known, so it was easier than expected. But after noon, they began to appear in groups of 3, which was too many even for barbarians like them, so the demon hunting stopped. In the evening the friends found a wonderful place to sleep, but soon a group of people came there. Einar gave them a stern look and ordered them to get out if there was no business to be done. In fear, the knights turned around and ran away. Considering the way she treats and had treated people last time, something must have happened to her in the labyrinth. Bjorn didn't bother to ask now, but decided to be sure to do so later. The girls said that they knew their location now, so they'd better make camp farther away from here. For a while they wandered around looking for a suitable place, but suddenly they heard cries for help. The guys realized that such sounds do make those who are attacked by monsters. It could only mean one thing: the adventurers are killing each other. They broke from their seats and ran to where the pleas were coming from. Soon the camp appeared before them. There were 4 corpses on the ground, and a girl standing beside them, completely covered in armor, holding a bloody dagger in her hand. A marauder. Marauders, people who are in the business of preying on other adventurers. Instead of collecting magic crystals and equipment from slain monsters, they do it at the expense of their colleagues. Of course, in Rapdonia, such a crime is punishable by death. But on the other hand, no one convicted Bjorn for killing 6 adventurers, even though it was self-defense. Outside the labyrinth no one would know anything, unless of course there was no one to tell. The girl who stood before them was tall and trim, with shoulder-length red hair, a torn right ear, and a tattoo under her eye. With such attributes, she simply had to be famous, but since she wasn't, she must be insanely good at what she did. Simply put, she never leaves witnesses. Bjorn turned his attention to the 4 corpses behind the marauder. Judging by the rather high-level equipment, they reached at least the 5th floor, plus there was a mage among them. 3 of them had no visible wounds, and the froth from their mouths indicated poisoning. It looked like one of them was immune, so they had to deal with it the old-fashioned way. Bjorn asked the outlaw if it was her team. The girl replied that they probably thought she was their friend. Then she calmly turned her back to the 2 barbarians and began to search the bodies, seemingly unafraid. The young man realized that they could not cope with such a strong opponent, so he ordered his partner to run as fast as possible. At the moment it was the only way they managed to buy some time, but it was unclear when the criminal would give chase. Just in case, Bjorn left notes on the trees so that he could quickly return to the portal to the 1st level. Suddenly the barbarians came across a squad of 4 men. Trusting them was a questionable decision, but there was no choice. The young man explained the situation and asked for help. The bald man in armor drew his dagger and asked what guarantees they had that they were marauders themselves. Bjorn swore on the warrior's honor, once again convinced it was a cheater's trick. The bald man then stipulated that if the marauder was killed, his team would take all the equipment. The barbarian said no problem. The man then revealed that he was using the gnome's skill to hide the twosome. The gnome's skill makes everyone within a 3-meter radius blend in with their surroundings, a very powerful camouflage ability. The only downside is that you can't move, but it's a good price to pay for avoiding a suicidal battle. After finishing his sorcery, the man smiled, saying that he had been very lucky and that the 2 barbarians had fallen into the trap themselves. Now Bjorn realized that they had been tricked. These bastards had turned out to be marauders themselves. It was impossible to resist or move at all, for the spell cast by the man was not a skill of the dwarf, but an effect of the stone golem. To break it, one must take at least the slightest damage. The squad members looked at the spoils the barbarians had accumulated in 2 days with satisfaction. One of them complained that they had finally managed to catch a woman, but she was just a common savage. Another said it was for the best, reminding them how much barbarian hearts cost on the black market. Soon they decided to get down to business, and one of them drew a knife. Just before the stab, a plan matured in Bjorn's mind: prepare himself lightning fast and tilt his head back before the blade entered deep enough into his neck. He prepared himself and, waiting for the leisurely assassin to bring the knife up, he lashed out as soon as he started to move his hand. Everything went according to plan, and one of the outlaws was already lying on the ground. Bjorn then grabbed his knife and threw it at Einar to regain her ability to move as well. The girl picked up her weapon and ran towards the humans. A few seconds of fighting and the 3 hapless marauders were finished. However, the bleeding from his neck made itself felt and Bjorn collapsed to the ground. Einar had already begun to mourn him, giving the bald squad leader a chance to flee, but the young man struggled to get a word in edgewise and reminded his friend of the potion. They examined the wound. Surely a scar would remain. Bjorn rejoiced at his idea to buy the immortal seal. Without it he would surely die. Einar was even a little pleased, considering it some kind of achievement. The boy thought about it and also came to the conclusion that few barbarians managed to survive a neck wound, no matter how big you were. He then assumed that the man couldn't have run far, so we should capture him. Not a few minutes later, the criminal was already in Einar's hands. She was about to finish him off, but Bjorn stopped her, reminding her of the gnome's skill needed to hide from the marauder more forcefully. Suddenly a dart flew into the bald man's neck, causing him to gasp for breath as he convulsed. It looked like the tip had been poisoned. Turning around, the barbarians saw the same outlaw who had killed the 4 adventurers. She praised them for their fine fight. Bjorn realized that the outlaw had been watching the whole time, so if they couldn't escape, they would have to fight. Friends rushed into battle. Bjorn swung his sword, but the girl dodged again, so he decided that if he couldn't knock her down, he would push her. Bjorn swung his sword, but the girl dodged again. He decided that if he couldn't throw her down, he would push her. The barbarian grabbed his opponent, but in the same second he fell without the slightest opportunity to move. She was hit in the back, piercing the armor with a regular knife. Einar, her mouth bleed. Their opponent outmatched them in strength, speed, yes, in everything. Would they really meet their end here? The marauder told the young man not to even try to move, as the basilisk's paralyzing poison was already spreading through his body, but suddenly promised to spare the barbarians' lives if they promised not to tell anyone anything. Einar warned her friend not to trust this outlaw, but she explained that she owed a debt to the barbarians, so she simply could not take the lives of any of them. Now Bjorn understood why she hadn't intervened in the fight. She wouldn't have had to do anything if those jerks had handled it. Somewhat doubtful of the girl's promise, Bjorn nevertheless swore on his warrior's honor to keep his mouth shut. Then the outlaw turned to Einar, but the latter refused to swear an oath. The criminal said she had no other choice and swung for the fatal blow, but Bjorn stopped her and ordered her to fulfill the condition. She tried to refuse again, but he reminded her of her agreement to obey and repeated the order. Not daring to disobey and resist someone she read is much smarter than herself. The female barbarian also promised not to tell anyone anything. Then the marauder kept her promise as well, helping her friends up. Bjorn asked her what floor she was from. The girl said she was from the 8th. The young man realized that if she was really an adventurer from the 8th floor, only her debt to the barbarians could save them. But mentally he promised that next time it would be different. Soon they were spit out onto the first level of the maze. Einar landed flat on the stone floor, where she lay for several seconds. Bjorn asked if she was alright. The girl replied that she was in pain, but since she was no longer a warrior, she couldn't complain. It was much worse than the guy had expected. He wondered why begging for mercy with the he explained that only the strongest warriors could survive.